Welcome to the Quotivation Podcast. Together, we will unlock inspiration, one quote at a time. Your host is one of America's top emerging public speakers. He is a former semifinalist in the World Championship of Public Speaking and is an expert motivator. Please welcome Jody Powell.
Welcome to another episode of the Quotivation Podcast. And hey, we've hit a milestone. Well, maybe it's more like a yardstone. I don't know. But we've made it to 10 episodes. So we're going to celebrate. It has been an absolute joy and pleasure to bring 10 episodes to you week after week so that you can find ways to win your week. And I hope you have been able to do that. So as we go through episode 10 of the Quotivation Podcast, we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to celebrate this incredible yardstone. No, it's a milestone. It's a milestone that we're going to cherish and we're going to celebrate. We're going to have fun with today. I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready for your week ahead. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend where you were able to recharge, reconnect with family, with friends, do the things that you love to do outside of work. Because we should love our work, right? We should love our job. There's nothing better than having a job that you absolutely love, work that you love to do, that you have a passion for. It brings fulfillment. It brings excitement. It brings satisfaction in the hard work that you've put in. It's incredible to have a job, to do the work, to do things that have an impact on other people. And I believe that there's not a person out there that has a job that doesn't impact someone else. Some of you may say, yeah, not my job. You don't know what I do. I don't hardly interact with anyone. I don't have a direct connection with a customer. There's not a lot of people in my department. I usually just come in, put my head down, do my work, and go home. I don't impact people, really. I don't know that anyone would notice if I didn't show up. I didn't do my job. Not really sure how meaningful it is. Every single job, every single one of you has the power to impact so many people in the work that you do. I remember when I was in college, I would come home for the summer and I would go to work at a manufacturing plant. And I'd work on the assembly line. The first year, Mr. Procrastinator here was a little late applying. So I got stuck on third shift. Midnight to 8. All you third shift workers out there, God bless you. I don't know, man. There was just something about eating a cheeseburger at 3:30 in the morning that just did not feel natural. Right? It didn't feel normal. I had a vitamin D deficiency that entire summer because I never saw the sun. But I was on third shift and I worked with a woman who had been on third shift for over 20 years. Loved it. Loved her job. Look, she was just operating a machine. She was running parts through a machine that would calibrate them. It would be easy to sit back and say, there's no meaning in that. There's no power in that. There's nothing that impacts people. I just run parts through a machine, I push a button, type in a few things on the computer, and that's it. Well, I got to know the person that did that same job on the first shift, and we began to talk a little bit as shift change would come, and we began talking about her. And he said, I love her. She is amazing. She's impacted me in such a powerful, powerful way. I'm like, how do you mean? What do you mean? You see her for 2 minutes a day. You don't actually work together. How has she impacted you? He said, well, inevitably, on days that I need it the most, Somehow she knew. I would open a drawer. I would open the drawer at the desk as I prepared for the day, and there'd be a note there. And the note would say something like, I hope you have a fabulous day. Took her 10 seconds to write, maybe 5 seconds to put in the drawer. 15 seconds. And it had such a profound impact on that person that he thought the world of her. So don't tell me that you have a job that you can't impact other people. They didn't interact. They didn't spend 8 hours together. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was. But do the things that are meaningful, impactful, influential, empowering, so that other people can see the greatness inside you. Because it's there. I've seen it. You've seen it. And we're going to take that greatness, we're going to draw it out, and you're going to win your week. This week and every week. And I hope listening to the Quotivation Podcast helps you to win your week. So what do you say? Let's get started. We're going to do things a little differently this week. We're going to celebrate this milestone, because that's exactly what it is. So what do you say? Let's get started.
It's time to celebrate. The Quotivation Podcast has hit a milestone, and we are going to celebrate our win and look back to see what we have learned. Come along for the ride and stay for the whole party as Jody provides one of his own quotes to get you quotivated. So get fired up and ready to be inspired so that you can win your week.
All right, let's get to our special guest for the 10th episode of the Quotivation Podcast. That special guest is me. I'm going to be my own guest this week because it is kind of a milestone. It sounds small. It's 10 weeks. Congrats. Big deal. There are podcasts out there that have 300, 400, 500 episodes. Been doing it for years. That's great. But there's something that I've learned over the course of my career, and that is you have to celebrate the small wins. You have to celebrate. I made it to 10. It's great. It's fantastic. I want to make it to 1,000. But I can't get to 1,000 if I don't get past 10. And so here we are, the 10th episode. And I want to celebrate a little bit. How do we do that? What do we do when we reach a milestone? Well, I think it's important to stop and look around and see where you are, how far you've come. But I think it's also important to look back, to reflect, to recap what we've learned. You know, it's so easy to go from week to week, to guest, quote to quote, without stopping and really thinking about what we've experienced, what we've learned, how many weeks we've won, how many we haven't. And so I think it's really important to reflect, celebrate, and look forward. Allow yourself the time for closure, for the chapter to close and to move on. And that's so true in a lot of things, in many things. But what we're going to do today is that we're going to go through the previous 9 episodes, look at each quote, and we're going to have just some discussion around each one. And then as we get to the 10th quote, yeah, I've got a quote for you. So we'll talk about that as we move forward. Episode 1. Muhammad Khatani was a 2015 world champion of public speaking. The world champion of public speaking, the contest that is that is put on every year by Toastmasters International, and it is an international contest. Toastmasters International is huge. It's a huge organization with clubs all over the world. You can go virtually anywhere and find a Toastmasters International club. And if you can't find it, wherever you are, there are plenty of clubs that offer the opportunity to join virtually. And so in 2015, Mohammed Khatani entered into the Toastmasters International World Championship of Public Speaking. The International Speech Competition is what it's called. As you go through clubs, there are over, last year there were over 30,000 contestants. Mohammed Khatani was victorious in all of his competitions as he moved forward and became the world champion of public speaking. I first heard Mohammed Khatani's speech probably 4 or 5 years ago. The speech that actually won him the world championship. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. It's powerful. It's called The Power of Words. And he has such an incredible introduction to that speech. Mohammed brought a quote that his grandmother would use. See, Muhammad is from Saudi Arabia. A lot of sand in Saudi Arabia, a lot of sun, not a lot of rain. When it rains there, it's an event, it's an occasion, it's something to talk about. Oh, it's something to talk about in the States. Like I told him, when it rains here, we complain because we can't go play golf, or we can't get out and do something outside because the rain is common here. But in Saudi Arabia, it's not common at all. And so this is where that quote comes from. He said his grandmother would say, "Be like the rain. It comes down in minutes, but it leaves people talking about it for days." And the idea behind this quote, be like the rain, be different, be something that people get excited about, be something that people want to talk about. Don't overstay your welcome. Don't force it. Don't force your message. But be someone that people want more of. In a desert environment, you want more rain. And when it rains, it's an event, you talk about it. Be like the rain. It comes down in minutes, but it leaves people talking about it for days. So what are some of the ways we can be like the rain? Add value. Bring value. If you're in a situation where you're working on a project or you're talking about a topic, do your research, do the work, learn. Grow, develop, understand what it is that you're talking about so that you can add value to the conversation. Add value in a way that people turn around and say, where did that come from? Wow, this isn't even their job. This isn't even their area of expertise. And yet they're talking like they've studied this for years. Be like the rain. Comes down in minutes, but it leaves people talking about it for days. And that was from Mohammed Khatani in the first episode of the Quotivation Podcast. Episode 2, Steve Gilliland. Steve Gilliland's a longtime friend, mentor of mine, Hall of Fame speaker, prolific author. I absolutely wanted to have Steve on because, one, it gave me the opportunity to highlight him and highlight the accomplishments that he has achieved. His 25th year as a speaker. And Steve has had the opportunity to present in 6 of the 7 continents. I hasn't figured out how to get to Antarctica yet, but if there's a way, Steve will find it. In multiple countries, all 50 states. So many people that Steve has had the opportunity to pour into. I being just one of them. And Steve talked about a quote from Charlie Tremendous Jones, another fantastic speaker. And Steve was asked at some point, hey, have you ever heard anything from Charlie Jones? And Steve said, I know the name. I know who he is, but I haven't really haven't really followed him, haven't really heard him much. So Steve being an avid reader, and if you go back and watch on YouTube season or episode 2, you see the books lining the walls in Steve's office, and they go down the sides that you can't see. The books everywhere. He's an avid reader. He purposely makes time to read. And you can tell it from this quote, because the first thing he found out about Charlie Tremendous Jones, the first thing he read was a quote. And it turned out to be the quote that Steve brought to us. You will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And as Steve and I had this interaction in these discussions, I was struck with the irony of that statement. It didn't really dawn on me at first when he and I were talking about what the quote was going to be, and he had sent me some information about it. And I looked up Charlie Tremendous Jones, and I heard him, and I heard this quote. I heard him say this quote. But if you think about it, you will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. What are things that change you over the course of 5 years? Well, a lot of times, and I believe Steve even said his own mom would say, you are the people you hang around. So if you meet new people, and it's true that you are the people you hang around, then it's logical to say that you're not going to be the same person based on the new people that you meet, because they're going to influence you. They're going to change you. Hopefully you're hanging around the right people, and they're going to change you for the better. And then Steve talked about a book that he read from Super Bowl champion coach Tony Dungy. And in the book, Tony was talking about the way you do things, how you approach things, whether it's responding to email, whether it's talking in person. And one of the quotes within the book was that if you think about what you say, and I'm going to butcher the quote here, but if you think about what you say, if it doesn't add value, if it doesn't make things better, then don't say it. Steve said this book changed the way he approached everything. And so as we think about Steve's quote from Charlie Tremendous Jones, it says, you'll be the same person in 5 years you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. If the things that change you are the people that you meet and the books you read, in 5 years, you're not going to be the same person at all. Because you're going to meet people, because you're going to read books, you're going to grow and you're going to learn, you're going to develop. The irony and the cleverness of this quote, it just struck me. It's like you're going to be the same person, except you're not going to be the same person at all. That was the second episode of the Quotivation Podcast with Steve Gilliland. By the way, if you want to learn more about Steve, go to www.stevegilliland.com. And you can find out where Steve is speaking, how to book Steve to come speak for you if you have that opportunity, and certainly how you can purchase books that Steve has written. Steve, being such an incredible author, has written over 11 books, and many of them making it to New York bestseller list, and they're all fantastic, fantastic books. You can also, for our first guest, Muhammad Khatani, you can go to www.khatanispeaks.com to learn more about opportunities and ways to get in touch with Muhammad Khatani. Our third guest, the average dude, Daniel Allison. Oh, Daniel is a ball of energy. Daniel and his cousin, Jenny Winnie, the average dude, Jenny Winnie and the average dude, they have a LinkedIn Live podcast every Thursday. Tune into that every Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pretty sure that's right. But you can go on to LinkedIn. You can connect with Daniel. You connect with Jennifer Watkins, Jenny Winnie, and you can connect actually with their LinkedIn page, Jenny Winnie and the Average Dude Podcast, and you'll see it promoted there. And it's live. They don't edit it. They just go with it. That's the way Daniel is. That's just the average dude. We talked about that name, the average dude. And he's like, I just want to come in. I just want to be someone that can add value and learn and grow and develop. I'm just an average dude. Nothing special. I'm gonna tell you something. He's the most extraordinary, above average dude that I've ever met. But he is the average dude, and brought to us a fantastic quote that allowed us to think about where we are. It allowed us to think about our perspective. It's a quote from Eckhart Tolle. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Make the now the primary focus of your life. And Daniel and I got into a discussion about, man, the anxiety that we can face, the anxiety that we have looking forward or looking back, worrying about what is to come, worrying about what's happened, worrying about people in the present. Hey, listen, whatever's to come, it may come and it may not. We're not guaranteed a future. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed the end of this podcast. What we're guaranteed is right now. So what can you do right now so that you will have a better future? What are the things that need to be done? And Daniel talked about how he looks at that and how he takes meaningful action and take steps to do right now. If he thinks about, well, I want to make a connection down here with this group at this construction site because they're going to need some really powerful HVAC units, and that's what I do. So, boy, it'd be great to get that cell. How do I get there? Well, I'm not doing anything right now. Let me get up, walk down there, and start talking to the guys. Take action now, because the now is all we have. It's all we're guaranteed. We can plan for the future, and we should plan for the future, but that future is not promised. Right now, living in this moment is all we're guaranteed. And Eckhart Tolle has an incredible story about how he came to this realization. He was crippled with anxiety and fear and depression over worry about what's happened. You can't change what's happened. Worry about what's going to happen. What's going to happen hasn't even happened yet. So why are we worrying about it? This realization that he came to, that the now should be the primary focus of your life. It's a powerful story. Go back and check it out. That was Daniel Allison, guest number 3 on the Quotivation Podcast, with his quote from Eckhart Tolle. If you want to know more about Daniel Allison and his podcast and what he's doing with manufacturing masterminds, check him out on LinkedIn. Just search for The Average Dude. He'll come up. He's anything but average. Our 4th guest, Rob Schweimer. Rob is an incredible speaker. Still is. I met Rob through a speaker connection group, and he and I just kind of hit it off. He had an incredible story of overcoming adversity, and not just overcoming adversity, having a plan to overcome adversity. Because we don't know when tragedy is going to strike. We don't know when things are going to happen. We don't know when things are just going to blow up. I was telling my wife just a couple of days ago that, yeah, I'm going to stop saying everything's going to be okay, because every time I say everything's going to be okay, something else happens. I told one of my friends, it's like we're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like we're living in a shoe store and someone's throwing them up in the air. They're all dropping. Life can be that way. Adversity comes when we least expect it, when it's least convenient, but you can plan for it. You can be ready for it. You can respond to it in a powerful way, in a way that allows you to deal with it, to grow from it, to learn from it. And yes, as Rob said, even be grateful for it. And Rob believes that living in a grateful state, when you live in a state of mind that is full of gratitude, it is impossible to feel anger. Says it's been scientifically proven. I haven't done the research to know whether that's true or not, but I trust Rob. If he says it has, it has. And it makes sense. If you think about it, it makes sense. If I'm grateful for the things around me, if I'm grateful for where I am, despite the things that are going on, despite the shoes that are dropping right and left, if I'm grateful for the things that I have, grateful for the place I'm in, I can't be mad about anything. The two are mutually exclusive. So Rob brought us this quote, and he said it in his book, and he preaches it, and he stands by it. Rob said he's going to make living in a beautiful state non-negotiable. Now, Rob's from Jacksonville, Florida, so he lives in a beautiful state. Love Florida, but that's not what he means. It's a state of mind. Live in a beautiful state of mind. Living in a beautiful state of mind is something that you should do, period. According to Rob, it's non-negotiable. You can't barter with that. It's table stakes. It's the cost of entry. Make living in a beautiful mind, in a beautiful state of mind, non-negotiable. Rob talks about that in his book. Right there. Surrender to your adversity. Surrender to your adversity. We had a great conversation about the word surrender. I said, Rob, doesn't that mean to give up? No, surrender is not giving up. Surrender is giving in, leaning in, bringing that adversity in, internalizing it, processing it. And he said, stacking it. Rob's been through a lot of adversity in his life. He talks about it in his book. He talked about it on the podcast. He's a recovering addict. He lost his first wife tragically, unexpectedly. Rob's faced some adversity, and he's learned to surrender to it, to overcome it, to use it, and yes, even to be grateful for it. That was episode 4 with Rob Schweimer. Oh, episode 5. My man, Michael Cogdill. I could spend the rest of this podcast just talking about how wonderful of a person Michael Cogdill is. You don't know Michael, he has been a long time news anchor. 32 Emmys to his credit. That's just a small percentage of the man. Michael is amazing. He's an amazing storyteller. He's an amazing speaker. He is the type of person that when you leave the room, you feel like you are the most important person in the world. That's how he makes you feel. That's powerful. I can't say enough about Michael Cogdill. Michael came and he talked about so many things, but primarily the message was love. He asked the question, say, have you been to Costco lately? Have you been to Costco? Anywhere like it? Go to Costco. Look around. Look around. Look around at the people that are walking next to one another, that are inches from each other, that look like they are 1,000 miles apart. There's no love there. There's no effort. There's no work being done to create that environment of love. There's no love for the fellow man, for fellow human beings. Don't believe that? Go drive around town for a little while and see how many times you hear a honk of the horn or the middle finger, for that matter. But despite all that, Michael brought a quote, and he believes it. It's from William Faulkner. It's actually from when William Faulkner received his Nobel Peace Prize. And in the banquet, William Faulkner made the statement, I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail. We talked about what do those words mean, endure and prevail. And Michael said endure, it's like survival. Like we're in survival mode. There's too many people that are in survival mode. Too many people that are just going through their day to get through their day. But we're called to do so much more. We're called to be so much more. Michael asked the question, said, man, when's the last time that you just grabbed that woman by the face lovingly, gently, held her face in your hands, looked her in the eyes, and said, honey, I love you? When's the last time you did that? What would she do if you did? Those are questions that Michael would ask. Gives us opportunities to think, opportunities to understand that, man, if we're going to prevail, if we're going to do more than survive, it's going to have to be through love. It's going to have to be through love. It's not going to be by anything else. We're not going to agree. We're in election year, 2024. Blue, red. You think those two sides are coming together? You haven't been paying attention if that's what you think. There's so much dividing us. Not just in this country, but in the world. So much dividing us. The list goes on and on. But what's the one common unifier? The one common thing that brings everyone together, that will ensure that mankind, as William Faulkner said, as Michael brought to us, will prevail. Love. It's the one thing. It's the only thing in my mind. An expression of love. That's how we prevail. And that's what Michael brought to us. I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail. William Faulkner. That was the 5th episode of the Quotivation Podcast with Michael Cogdill. Guest 6. I'm going to say it one time and then I'm going to abbreviate it. Peter Hagiovlasidis. That's not right. Peter Hagiovlasidis. That's right. Peter A., as he is known. For good reason. Peter A. is an incredible speaker. He's been an advertising executive, marketing guru. He's hung out with stars. Every time I say something to Peter about a star, oh yeah, Peter, hey, you need to go watch Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell. It's a great movie. Next thing I know, I get a text from him. It's Peter standing with Will Ferrell. The guy knows everybody. Peter A. brought us a great quote. He talked about how he has transformed in his career, how he's reinvented himself. And he did that through the help of many people. And what he came to realize as he's writing his book, as he puts together his keynotes, is that a lot of times, like, the people that have helped me the most are people that I just met. And they seem to come into our lives at just the right time. It's not too often we're digging out the old contact list. I almost said Rolodex. Half my audience would probably be like, what? Okay. It's not often that we're looking through the contact list saying, oh yeah, there's somebody from 7 years ago. They can help me. Boom. No, what Peter says is that the person that is going to help you the most, you probably haven't met yet. And that's an interesting thought, because when you're in a place where you need help, and Peter talked about being in that place, we talked about, it's easy to just sink into the couch, not want to engage, not want to network, especially when you've been traumatized or when you've been hurt. Peter said that's when you got to get up and move the most. That's when you got to go and you got to meet people, you got to network, because the person that's going to help you the most, you probably haven't met them yet. And so there's action required. You got to go, you got to move, you got to meet, you got to get out there, you got to put yourself out there, you got to put the trauma behind you, you got to use what Rob Schweimer talked about, overcoming that adversity, surrendering to it, learning how to deal with it, and moving on so that you can meet the person that's going to help you the most. It was episode 6 with Peter Hagiovlasidis. I know how to say it, Peter. I do. Peter A, as he is known. PeterASpeaks.com. Fantastic speaker, a great person. Someone you should get to know. Guest number 7. This one was fun. Dr. Michael T. Benson. He is the president of Coastal Carolina University. And not only did I get to have the opportunity and the pleasure of having him on the podcast, the very next week, I had a speaking engagement at Coastal Carolina, and I had the opportunity to go down and Dr. Benson, Mike, as he told me to call him, Dr. Benson. Dr. Benson was gracious enough to take 30 minutes out of his day and welcome me to the campus, invited me to his office, gave me a copy of his book, Daniel Coit Gilman and the Birth of the American Research University. Forbes called this book one of the most intriguing and prolific books for higher education in 2023. So I was able to go down and meet Dr. Benson, have a great conversation with him. But before that, he was on our podcast. And he loves being on podcasts. He does a fantastic job. He was so engaging, so entertaining, and has a great story about his family and the connections there with the person that said his quote, George Washington Carver. And George Washington Carver brings so many powerful quotes. He said so many amazing things. It's like Mike said in the podcast. He said there are so many people that are smarter than he or I that have said so many amazing things. That's why we love quotes. Well, this is the one that he brought for us from George Washington Carver. He said, how far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the strong. Because someday in your life, you will have been all of these. There's a lot there to unpack. You know what I find interesting about this quote? First, that as George Washington Carver goes through and lists these things, we're being tender with the young. Young minds are so impressionable, so open to suggestions, so vulnerable. We think about the bullying that goes on online behind keyboards. We think about the stories we hear of young children being lured to meet people in chat rooms, putting themselves in danger. They're so impressionable. Young people want to please. They're pleasers. They want that affirmation that they've done something right. They've done something to make someone happy. And so George Washington Carver here says, being tender with the young. Raising kids can be aggravating, can be frustrating. My kids were great kids. There were times that they were very frustrating. So we have to be tender. We have to take time to take a breath and explain why things are the way they are. Explain how not everyone has their best intentions at heart. Be tender with the young. Compassionate with the aged. Compassionate with the aged. Oh, I find myself thinking about the time that my wife and I spent taking care of her parents, who have since deceased, and miss them dearly. But there's so much compassion in her heart for all she did for each of them in their sickness. She was a young mother. She had 2 young kids, each parent having a different type of illness that she had to learn, she had to understand, and then she had to care for them, being an only child. The amount of compassion that takes, it's amazing. Sympathetic with the striving. People that are striving to be better. Maybe they're struggling, but they're striving to improve. They're striving to be better. So we should be sympathetic, encouraging, wanting them, cheering them on, wanting them to be better. Tolerant of the weak and the strong. Tolerant of the weak. Sometimes we're weak We want people to be tolerant with us. Tolerant of the strong. Sometimes people are too good at what they do and they know it. So we should be tolerant of that lack of humility because they are good. And maybe out of love, call them out on it a little bit. So how far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the strong. And here's the kicker, because someday in your life, you will have been all of these. Someday we're going to need somebody to be sympathetic with us as we become aged. Someday we're going to need someone to be tolerant of us because we're not able to do the things that they need us to do, or maybe we're a little full of ourselves. Maybe we're a little too strong. Incredible quote. So deep, so powerful, from Dr. Michael T. Benson, president of Coastal Carolina, guest number 7 on the Quotivation Podcast. Then we come to Denise Beers-Kipper. Denise, the Chaos Sherpa, fantastic friend and wonderful business mind, brought us a quote from Mother Teresa. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters, create many ripples. We had a fantastic conversation about this, and the way you use this quote to win your week, Denise said, it's this. First thing you have to do, we all have rocks. We all have our rocks. Pick up a rock. What's one of the changes that you need to make in your life? Pick it up. Look at it. Look at the rock. Name it. Give it a name. Whatever it is that you want to change. I'd said earlier on, in one of the episodes that one of the things that I wanted to change about me, I wanted to love more. I think it was in the Shot of Motivation during episode 5 with Michael Cogdill. I want to love more. I want to love my fellow man more. I want to show that grace. I want to extend that grace. I want to be more empathetic. I want to be more understanding. I want to show that love as opposed to frustration or anger. And so that's my stone. I call it love. And I threw that stone into the water. It started creating ripples. And then you get to see where those ripples go. And guess what? As we talked about with Denise, the ripple is circular. It goes in every direction, including back to you. You give someone love, you receive love in return. I'll prove it to you. Go out in public, and at every person that you see, smile. And don't do like some kind of half-hearted, half-assed smile. One of these. Give someone a good smile, teeth and all. Just look at them and smile and see what you get back. Throw that stone and watch that ripple come back to you. I guarantee you, not everyone, but most everyone smile right back at you. And even if they don't, guess what you've done? You've made their day a little brighter. You've cast that stone and they've received that ripple. And the great thing about that is that they're more likely in turn to smile at someone else that day. You can change the life of one person. It's very likely that that person can change the life of 1,000 because of what you did for them. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. Someone else receives that and they cast their stone, and those ripples go out and somebody receives that and they cast their stone, and those ripples go out and somebody receives that and they cast their stone. Suddenly, I alone did not change the world, but all of the ripples from all of the stones and all of the oceans, those changed the world. Powerful quote from the 8th guest on the Quotivation Podcast, Denise Beers-Kipper. Guest number 9. I was a huge fan of, still am, even more so now. Former quarterback for the Clemson Tigers, former NFL star, and current motivator, inspirer, mentor, coach. Woodrow Dantzler III. Woody Dantzler was the first running quarterback that I ever saw that reminded me of someone like a Randall Cunningham. So talented on the field. Then I met him. Then I heard him speak through his speaking program, Wooden Pieces. And man, his talents go so much further beyond the field. It's incredible. Woody came to us with 2 quotes, which is totally fine. And I love the way that the quotes tie together. He said, the first one is from Robert Frost: 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. When he talked about being different, being a contrarian, not doing the same thing that everyone else does. He talked about learning from his father. How his father told him, said, son, experience is the best teacher, right? We said, yeah, that's right. His father said, no. Experience is a good teacher, but it's not the best. Other people's experience is the best teacher. So you see that stove over there? If I walk over to that stove and put my hand on it and it's hot and it burns my hand, you have learned not to put your hand on the stove. And now you don't have to suffer the pain of burning your hand to learn that lesson. So insightful. Mr. Woodrow Dantzler Jr. was an incredibly smart man. When he talked about how the roads diverged in the woods, and the road less traveled, that's the one that he always wants to travel down, the one that is less traveled, blazing his own path. But if you're going to go down the road less traveled, it starts with the first step, which brings us to the next quote that he brought us from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. You can't go down the road less traveled. It can't make all the difference till you take the first step. You don't have to know in life, you don't have to know where the road goes. The road will lead where the road will lead. But the road doesn't lead anywhere until you take that first step. Powerful quotes. From the first 9 guests on the Quotivation Podcast, it's always fun to look back and remember and think about those and utilize those again to win your week. You know, it's like Zig Ziglar once said, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. He said, some people say that motivation doesn't last. Yeah, well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. It's always good to look back at these quotes because they're not just going to win one week for you. They can win your week every week. They can help you, inspire you, motivate you to win your week every week. So it's always good to look back. Well, how about guest number 10? What's he brought for us today? Well, I want to share with you a quote. It's from my new keynote speech. It's called Unshackled, the freedom to thrive. And Unshackled is about recognizing the 4 captors that tend to imprison us. And these 4 captors are not outside forces. They're not invading countries, or they're not things that come from other forces or other places. These 4 captors are self-induced. We put the shackles on ourselves. Fear. Fear is a captor. We allow fear to enter our minds. We allow fear to dictate our actions. We allow fear to prevent us from taking action. We fear failure. We fear judgment. We fear the worst case scenario. Second is doubt, self-doubt. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I can't do the things that I want to do. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the education. I don't have the degrees. I don't have the certifications. I don't have the things that I need in order to move forward. I am not good enough. Those are all self-induced shackles. Self-sabotage. You know, one of the things that my wife has a passion for is fitness. And she likes to help people on their fitness journey, on their wellness journey. And she's often debated, should she become a coach? Should she start charging for this? Because she does it for free. She does it out of the kindness of her heart. She just shares the knowledge that she's learned. She's not certified. She didn't go to school for it. She's not a professional trainer. She just learned things and she shares them with other people. And it's incredible because when it comes to nutrition, she'll hear people say things like, yeah, but can I still have that? I mean, just once in a while. I have to have my glass of wine after work. I have to have my cheeseburger. I have to have my sweets. I have to have them too, by the way. And I looked at her one night and I said, you know, it's interesting. If you still have to have, you're always going to be. And she said, oh my God, that's really good. I was like, is it? Because I don't know if that made a lot of sense. If you still have to have, you're always going to be. If you still have to have alcohol, you're always going to be fat. If you still have to have cake, your sweets, your coffee, you're always going to be what you are. It's self-sabotage, believing that we have to have something that's not good for us, making excuses so that we don't have to do the things that are hard in order for us to become what we want to become. See, it happens so frequently that we have aspirations of what we want to be, but we aren't willing to put in the work to be that. We aren't willing to do the things that we need to do to accomplish the goals. We just want the goals. It's not laziness. A lot of people will say that. Now you're being lazy. You don't want to put in the hard work. You don't really want it. And that's not true. You really do want it. There are a lot of things that I really want that I haven't put in the work to do. It's not because I'm lazy or undisciplined. It's not because I don't really want it. It's because I am imprisoned by one of my captors, that being self-sabotage. That deep down, there's an emotional issue that I have with whatever it is that I want to be. Maybe I think I don't deserve it. Maybe I think I can never achieve it. Maybe I think I just don't want to do that hard work to do it. Whatever it is, we are sabotaging our success because we think we have to have. We think we have to do. We think we have to be, and I'm not going to change. And if that's what it is, then I'll just stay the way I am. It's not what we want. We're sabotaging ourselves, and it's a shackle. And then lastly, complacency. Steve Gilliland hates this phrase. It is what it is. And he's right. We become complacent. We get comfortable. We're just going to stay here. We're going to stay in our comfort zone. We're going to stay in our little box. I'm accepting of who I am. I'm accepting of the things that I can do. And I'm willing to let go of the things that I want to do because I just can't. And that's okay. I accept it. That's not acceptance. It's complacency. It's a captor. Put shackles on us. We're bound to it. And so what do you do? What do? You have these four general captors that work together to form these barriers, these chains, these prisons inside our hearts, inside our minds. How do you become unshackled? Well, first of all, I think it's understanding what it means to break free from your shackles. And this is my quote. This is my quote for episode 10 of the Quotivation Podcast. Breaking free from your shackles isn't about escape. It's about overcoming. It's a triumphant journey that transforms captors into catapults, propelling you towards a thriving existence filled with boundless opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, to break free from your shackles is not to escape. You're not escaping something, because these shackles are put on ourselves. They're put on internally. They're put on our minds, our hearts. We're not going to escape our mind. We're not going to escape our heart. That's not what we want to do. We want to overcome those captors that are shackling us. We want to overcome the fear. We want to overcome the self-doubt. We want to overcome the self-sabotage. We want to overcome the complacency. And we can't overcome that in an instant. It's a journey. Go back to Woody's quote. Man, take the first step. You don't have to see the whole staircase, but you do have to take the first step. You can't begin to climb until you step on that first step. That's what it's about. It's a journey. And it's a triumphant one, because as we begin to overcome our captors, they become catapults, launching us, propelling us forward. We take the fear and we use it and we turn it into energy. We take the complacency and we use it as an example of what not to do. We take the self-sabotage and we laugh at it. And we say, no, not today. You're not going to get me today. Your lies are not going to get me. Your lies are not going to prevent me from moving forward. We take that self-doubt. This is a tough one. It's a tough one because it's the one that I have the most. We take that self-doubt and we turn it into pride. Don't let the things you can't do stop you from doing the things you can. That's what doubt does. It doesn't just stop you from doing the things that you really can't do. It stops you from doing the things that you can do. Because when we start doing the things that we can do, those things that we can't do, suddenly we can do them. We're propelled forward. We grow, we learn, we develop, we advance, we gain strength, we gain endurance. You're not going to be able to bench press 280 pounds until you go to the gym and bench press 20, then 40, then 80, then 120, then 160, then 200. We gain the strength, the endurance by consistently doing the things we can do. And suddenly, the next thing you know, you turn around and you look. And because you have consistently done the things you can do, suddenly you're doing the things that you thought you couldn't. That's unshackling. That's overcoming. That's taking your captor and turning them into catapults. And when you turn them into catapults, they propel you forward. They propel you forward not just to exist, but to thrive. Think about what Michael said in episode 5 about men, about mankind. We're not here to endure, but to prevail. How do you prevail? You prevail by breaking free from your shackles. You prevail by turning your captors into catapults. You're propelled forward to thrive. A thriving existence filled with boundless opportunities. Man, you unshackle, you move forward, you learn to do things that you didn't think were possible, and suddenly those doors begin to open and the opportunities flood in. That is what it means to be unshackled. It's not about escape. It's about overcoming. The enemy that you face, you can see that enemy when you look in the mirror. That enemy is cunning. He knows you. She knows you. She knows what you're capable of. He knows what you can do and what you can't. He knows what you're afraid of. She knows the right buttons to push to prevent you from moving forward. Because he, she, that captor is you. We have to find a way to overcome. We have to find a way to overcome ourselves. Breaking free from your shackles isn't about escape. It's about overcoming. It's a triumphant journey that transforms captors into catapults, propelling you towards a thriving existence filled with boundless opportunities. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the first 10 episodes of the Quotivation Podcast. It's been a little different, but I think we're going to do this every 10 episodes. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's so easy to do a podcast, to edit it, to produce it, to put it together, publish it, promote it, and then move on to the next one. We shouldn't do that. Let's take time, stop, celebrate a win. We hit a milestone. Let's look back and see what we've done. This has been a great look back. Now we look forward. We look forward to the next 9 guests. And then at episode 20, I think we'll do this again. That's all the time we have for the Quotivation Podcast. I hope you have found ways to win your week. Until next time, stay quotivated.
You have been listening to the Quotivation Podcast, hosted by America's leading emerging speaker, Jody Powell. If you would like to book Jody to speak at your company, conference, or next event, visit www.jodypowellspeaks.com. You can also email him at Jody, that's Jody, at jodypowellspeaks.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Quotivation Podcast. And remember, stay quotivated.